Thank you all for joining this very important session. Ladies and gentlemen, we have today a very important topic with some very distinguished panelists. And I want to welcome you today because it's a topic that's of paramount importance in today's very rapidly evolving technological landscape. This theme around securing industrial control systems in the age of IoT and remote working is fundamental as we embrace the transformative potential of IoT and adapt to the growing trend of remote working. There's an unprecedented amount of new opportunities that come because of IoT, but also some formidable challenges. Today, industrial control systems are the backbone of critical infrastructure. They ensure the smooth and efficient operation of power grids, electricity, water, gas pipelines, manufacturing processes, and many more. However, with the integration of IoT devices into these systems and the proliferation of remote work, there's a new realm of possibilities. And this realm of possibilities is characterized by efficiency, connectivity, and of course, accessibility. But with these opportunities around this important theme, there comes some very substantial risks. The convergence of OT and IT,
I'm doing very well, and you? Nice to meet you.
along with the increasing complexity of interconnected systems, this has created an expanded attack surface for cyber threats. So what was used to be segmented and air-gapped networks, this has been challenged by the demands of real-time sharing, remote access, and holistic monitoring. Now, in this new era of heightened interconnectivity, the traditional security paradigms must adapt to address the unique security concerns that are posed by IoT integration and remote work. So we need to secure these industrial control systems with a delicate balance. We have to fortify cyber defenses, but we also have to preserve the integrity, the reliability, and the safety of operations. Now, our distinguished panelists, who I'm going to introduce very shortly, are each experts in their respective fields, and they will illuminate the complexities and the nuances surrounding this key topic. Together, we're going to today delve into some strategies, technologies, and best practices that organizations need to consider to safeguard industrial controls environments, to prevent and control breaches, to ensure the resilience of critical infrastructure in the face of today's threats. Throughout this discussion today, we're going to aim to explore practical insights, share experiences, and provide actionable intelligence with our panelists in this new transformative age. So I want to just thank you for attending this important session. Now let us begin this insightful journey into securing industrial control systems in the age of IoT and remote work. With that, let me please introduce our very distinguished and esteemed panelists. We have today from Nozomi Networks, Mr. Anton Shipulin, Industrial Cybersecurity Evangelist. We have from Xage Security, Mr. Kafity, Vice President for METAAP. And from Senhasegura, Mr. Marcus Shara, the Chief Executive Officer. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. Thank you, gentlemen. So the audience and I are very excited to hear about your insights and experience around this very important topic that we have here today. And I really want to, have an open dialogue with the audience to understand this topic and how your own individual best practices and experiences are going to help secure critical infrastructure environments in this new age that we operate in today. So I'm going to run through a couple of very key questions, and then we'll have a general dialogue to share with the audience our insights. So maybe I can start with Mr. Anton to begin with. Anton, incident response is a critical aspect of cybersecurity. We all know that. How should organizations adapt their incident response plans to address potential breaches that could impact both their IT and OT environments?
Thank you for the question. First of all, the companies should have the incident response plan in place. I hope they have it at least for IT infrastructure. In case they have it, they need to expand it to OT. Expanding to OT means to take into account all the specifics of OT infrastructure, meaning the physical process, the control system process, take into account all the aspects starting from preparation to incident response, detection, analysis, remediation, recovery, and lesson learned. On all these stages, they should take into account people aspects, so they should be people with skills, understanding the physical process, and understanding the control system specifics. They should have technologies that get specific data from physical process, access from specific control system components, as well as in recovery and response, we need to understand for OT systems and physical process, you cannot easily to isolate system or block something, you can crush the process. So it's very important to think more than 2 times what to do. So all these aspects should be in the plan that covers the OT infrastructure.
Excellent. Brilliant. That sounds good. Now, that's great when we look at the actual planning component of it, but as we know, the world has changed to a real-time sharing and a holistic monitoring approach, and there's been a rise of remote work. So, Mr. Ray Kafity, you've had a lot of experience in the world of APT and across different vendors. Now, with the rise of remote work, industrial control systems are increasingly accessed from external networks. What strategies and technologies should organizations adopt to ensure the security of remote access without compromising operational integrity?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So, as of a couple of years ago, the OT environment had interactions and interconnections locally within their environment. They were air-gapped. They didn't have the chance to connect to the outside world. Well, with the advent of COVID and the more reliance on external access to industrial-based assets and more interconnected and interactions between the OT devices and outside world places a major importance of securing somebody accessing the asset internally. So what Xage provides is a fabric that allows you to give zero trust, identity-based access management, policy-based access management, as well as very efficient and secure remote access into your environment without jeopardizing the integrity of the data and the authenticity of the data that is being generated in your environment. So policy-based, identity-based has to be identity-based because that's where the flexibility comes in place, secure remote access, and dynamic data integrity and sharing within the OT, IoT, IT environment becomes of paramount importance, and you can get all of those use cases deploying the Xage fabric in your environment.
So it sounds like a new world, Ray, from going to this siloed, air-gapped, disconnected environments to a world where we can actually securely manage OT environments with a zero-trust approach. Definitely an evolution from, for critical infrastructure. Now, Marcus, as the CEO of a well-known organization, you're probably engaging with a lot of different sectors. And in the audience today, we have a lot of different types of sectors within critical infrastructure: energy, water, transport, and others. Now, what do you feel are the key differences in securing industrial control systems across different sectors? and how they compare to each other? How should the security approaches differ in these cases?
Great question, and well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, we have been working in different sectors, and when it comes to critical infrastructure, we need to realize maybe 3 key points. The first, that is a very important infrastructure for the cities and the countries. So we need to understand that any damage on those infrastructure can cause a huge damage for society. So that's the first thing that we need to realize. So everything we're doing inside the critical infrastructure, we need to realize that. Second, those environments, they have a very restricted frameworks, like ECC. So you need to comply with all these regulations that are trying to address the key issues related to promoting cybersecurity in these environments. And third point that we need to consider related to critical infrastructure is that they have a very complex environment. They must be distributed, they have legacy systems, they have different protocols. So for us, when we approach this kind of infrastructure, we need first to understand really what is composing the infrastructure. Second, what are the key regulators? Because we need to address all the regulations recommendations. And on top of that, there is some good practices that you need to put. 2 of them that I would like to list here is the first that it's very important to segregate networks so you can contain the damage in case you have any kind of incident and reduce the impact. And the second one is that on top of that, you need to have a real-time monitoring. So again, if you have an incident, you need to be able to respond fast. So those are a few considerations about that.
Fair enough. That makes sense. I think that sounds like they're cross-industry considerations as well. You mentioned, Marcus, regulatory frameworks. So this is a question for all 3 of you. I'd like to hear your insights on this. The audience also wants to probably, is very keen to learn. What are the regulatory frameworks and standards that exist to guide the security of industrial control systems? We know about key frameworks in the kingdom, the National Cybersecurity Authority, SAMA, the banking sector. But on a global level and a local level, what are some of the regulatory frameworks and standards that you guys have seen that guide the security of industrial control systems? And how effective are they in addressing the challenges posed by IoT and remote work?
Yeah, talking about the cybersecurity frameworks for OT, industrial IoT, you're right, there are plenty of them. There are international standards, there are local standards like OTC in Saudi Arabia, there are sector-specific standards. But talking about the application of them, I personally like the IEC 62443 series, not only because it's the set of standards on different aspects of cybersecurity in IoT, in OT and IoT, but it also has the different application for these standards. For example, for certification of systems, there is systems of certification for systems and the devices, components of OT system. For security, secure software development lifecycle. There is a certification for people, for their skills for OT cybersecurity. And for example, if we talk about the IoT, the specific, it's quite new topic for cybersecurity. Last year, they launched the IoT-specific certification program, which is called IoT Component Security Certification, Assurance Certification. When this standard is very practical, you can use it as a, as a manufacturer, you use it as a benchmark, as a standard, what security control should be in place. As an asset owner, you can use this standard to ask secure IoT solutions from your providers. And as a service company, you use this standard for assessment, security assessment of IoT systems in place. This is one of the focal standards I highly recommend to use to improve your IoT in OT cybersecurity.
And you've seen them as being effective in managing.
Yes, we're seeing that it was launched last year, but I see now that some vendors, they started the processes. They want to show to the audience, to their clients, they are responsible for security, and there are secure IoT solutions.
Okay, great. Anything you'd like to add, gentlemen?
Well, I just like to add that since we start working in cybersecurity, I have seen time a few years ago where people were concerned about attending or checking box all the requirements from frameworks. And in fact, when we were selling, I was thinking, okay, people used to buy our product because they want to be compliant with the regulation, but they were not really concerned about the security itself. And now I'm seeing a turn on it because now they are really worried how to secure the infrastructure because they are really worried about double extortion, a lot of different cyber attacks. So I'm very happy to see this change in the market. So to answer your question, I believe that now the frameworks are being much more used than before. So they are being tested even more. And even though they still need to improve a lot, but we see a lot of change, and I believe that they are doing a great job in terms of improving the security.
Do you agree, Ray?
Yeah, I just want to add that in every market we go to, in every country we go to, the importance of the critical infrastructure are forcing the regulators, not forcing, but redirecting the regulator to issue a framework to secure this OT. We've seen that in North America, a lot of standards like the NIST, the IEC that is mentioned by my colleague, the TSA for pipeline security. So there's a lot of movement towards that, and we've seen it also in the Middle East, Turkey, and Africa, starting with the Saudi Arabia National Cybersecurity Agency, OT standards, and we as a company very much align ourselves with those standards because that's how governments make sure that their infrastructure is protected. So the more you look at solutions that adhere and comply with those standards, the better is your job and the better is... so we take this very seriously, and we always map our solution to those standards so we can be local to the market itself. So
that's really important point, Ray. I think it's great to see these standards and applying to the evolution of these ICS and OT environments, but it's even greater to see that the technology is actually adapting to those standards too. Correct. So that organizations can basically support achieving those frameworks and compliance standards by deploying the right technology, for example. Now, as I said in my intro, gentlemen, as we digitally transform the ICS environment, unfortunately, the downside is that the attack surface increases, right? It comes with the territory. Now, Anton, what strategies can organizations employ to continuously monitor and detect potential security breaches across this extended environment now with a larger attack surface as we start to digitally transform OT and ICS environments?
Well, the strategy I highly recommend is the situational awareness. To see as much as you can see from as much sources, to get data as much sources as you can get. But of course, it's important to be careful with lots of data. There is a lot of fatigue on alerts. There should be some automation. For talking about this situational awareness, I would draw lots of frameworks, recommendations, guides how to do that. I like one from, for example, from NIST, which is called NIST Special Publication 1807, which gives an example how the situation awareness can be deployed in an industrial company, for example, in a power company. Getting access, getting data from endpoints, from networks, even from from physical security systems. So collecting all this data, analyzing this data, and storing this data, and providing the full picture, full visibility into for the security purposes. Of course, it's important to start small, doing the strategy. Start with some sources, then adding additional sources, and then finally automating, prioritizing, and finally to get the full picture. In that case, I love analogies with physical world, like physical security system. When you have your CCTV cameras, you see the whole picture, what's going on the facility. Or I'm a big fan of, health monitoring, especially on myself. I love all the gadgets, all the sensors. If it's possible, I would implement
The
all of
rings
them.
and the watches.
Yeah. So the situation when you see what's going on with your the most important essence, like your body or your facility, your company, it's very important to see to detect anomalies as early as possible. So this is the highest visibility. This is the most important strategy for monitoring.
Okay, got it. It's interesting, I don't know if the audience picked up on this, but when we talk about ICS and OT, usually the focus is on devices. If you heard Anton, he spoke about data, and the focus is changed now to data within the ICS environments. Ray, when it comes to, when it comes to the role of encryption, authentication, access management, authorization, these are all key mechanisms around data, right? Because we're talking now about data. How do you see these playing out in safeguarding the data and the communications with the interconnected ICS environments that we are talking about now?
A very good question, Avinash. I will start answering this question by saying that OT networks focused initially on solutions that relates itself to threat detection and response. And some of my colleagues here provide that solution. It's very important. But as the journey of transformation is happening on the OT side, there's more emphasis now on threat prevention and protection solutions. And it starts with identity and access management, secure remote access, and what you mentioned, Avinash, is dynamic data security within that environment. So as automation becomes more technologically advanced, there's a lot of data that is collected, telemetry from your critical infrastructure asset. And there is a greater need for that data to be securely shared and transferred unidirectional or bidirectional in your OT environment and also onto your IT and cloud. And these data are needed, or these files are needed to do analytics, artificial intelligence on those data to get performance enhancements and modeling for the management to decide whether there is efficiency in their production environment. So dynamic data, secure dynamic data exchange within OT and IT and the cloud becomes of paramount importance. And again, it's incorporated in the Sage platform, where we allow authentication, we allow multi-level authentication and multi-factor authentication, as well as encryption within the data that's being shared becomes greatly important to ensure authenticity and integrity of the data being shared in such environment.
Very interesting. It sounds like these tools are fundamental, obviously, to adapt to this new interconnected world. Thanks, Ray. Marcus, as organizations implement more interconnected systems, because the goal here is to improve operational efficiency, right? Sure. That's the reason we're going through this digital transformation of, IoT and remote work, and but still having to maintain security. So how can organizations strike a balance between the benefits of this integration, but also the potential security risks that it introduces?
Right. Well, that's a very good question, because as we are getting more connected and we have more and more data that provide us intelligence and predictability, we need to be aware of the security. And in a certain way, we could maybe thinking about air gap or traditional security. Okay, if we don't connect everything, we reduce the risk, right? But business needs to evolve. We need to be more efficient. We need to work smarter. So we need those connections to create more data and to anticipate demands and make the infrastructure smarter. So how to balance that? So the question is not about if we're going to get connected or not, but how we are going to be connected. So really, that's something that appears here first. My recommendation is that if you're going to get really connected, you need to be aware how to do it. And the best way for me is first, follow the recommendations. There is a lot of organizations working around frameworks to give you the guidelines to do the good practice for those connections. So implement it and take care of implementing it carefully. Understanding how it impacts your infrastructure, but learn how to implement it to guarantee that you are not deploying more bricks inside your infrastructure. But on top of that, a few recommendations that I could, maybe I can recommend you is that one of the things that we really see a lot is the least privilege problem. So inside organizations, there is a complex of different applications. Each application has its own ability to manage the permissions and rights, so it's very, very complex. And on top of that, people are changing from department, from companies. So keeping the least privilege really okay is tough. So that's one tip that I would like to add on top. Good practice on the frameworks, but least privilege is one of the key concerns, and probably zero trust architecture.
Yeah, least privilege is one of the fundamental use cases and the benefits of zero trust security. So definitely an important point. Marcus, you touched on a key word which I think the audience really cares about, because it's great to talk about frameworks, it's great to talk about products and technologies, but the reality of it is every environment, every organization is different. They all have their own use cases. And I think each of you three gentlemen coming from your respective backgrounds are experts in your domains. And I think it's really important to look at, do you have any successful case studies or best practices where organizations have effectively secured their industrial control systems in this new age of IoT and remote work? And what lessons can you share with the audience from these examples?
Okay.
I can start. Well,
go ahead.
Yes, please.
First of all, we have plenty of this.
It's a good question, Katie.
We have plenty of these cases working in this industry specifically, so we see that every day. But it's important to remind that cybersecurity is not it's not project, it's a process, it's continuous. It's not possible to be 100 secure, so you are secured it and now you can have a rest. No, it's a process. What is important in this process, as I mentioned, is start small. If you, at the very beginning, don't try to do everything at the one time. Start with the most important assets, with the most important source of data. So prioritize. And then when you get it more and more data in system, try to automate. It's of course, it's clear that people are, make mistakes, they violate rules. That's important to replace people as much as possible with automation. This is my lesson learned from the what we see with our project in my experience.
Okay. Like to add anything, Marcus?
Okay, I would like to add that from my experience, and I have seen that a very successful organization that manage cybersecurity, they have a clear policy roadmap. They need to have very clear proceedings, get into the process itself, but it needs to be clear. Everybody in the organization needs to understand what is their role, what is right, what's not right. But to do that, they need to spend time planning and working in your proceedings. So my recommendation is work hard to create good procedures. So everybody in the organization can know what to do, how to implement things, and how to keep things updated. So this improves a lot the level of cybersecurity that you get.
Okay. Makes sense. Ray?
Yeah, I would like just to touch base on our website, we publish a lot of use cases with customers, right? One particular one that comes in mind is a big oil and gas energy company in the US called Kinder Morgan. After the Colonial Pipeline attack that took place in the US, there's been a greater intensity on looking at how to secure the critical pipeline and oil and gas in the US. Kinder Morgan contacted us to conduct a small pilot program in one of their OT environments, and we deployed our solution. We showed them how using identity-based zero trust mesh architecture, you can start with a small deployment and grow to cover all of your infrastructure. And that's exactly what Kinder Morgan has done. Started small, and now we are in their securing their 5,000 assets across the US. And moreover, they are inviting us now to look at how we can secure their IT privilege access management instead just only on the OT, because they saw the effective use of our solution in that environment. So yeah, you can, we certainly, every time we conclude a project with a customer, we ask their permission to see if we can publish that use cases. And some of them say no for confidential reasons, some of them say yes, and most of them are published on our website. So yes, we do a great value add in making sure the experience we encounter with one customer is shared with the rest of the community, basically.
So if I were to summarize, gentlemen, based on the feedback you've just given, one part is, from what Anton has talked about around getting the right visibility and then a prioritization of vulnerabilities. On the other side, it's about process and making sure, from Marcus, that is highlighted that it's fundamentally important to have your policies and your processes in place to have an effective security of industrial control systems environments. And Ray, on the other hand, has kind of talked about doing things in bite-sized pieces, pilot-based approaches to kind of figure it out and then learn from those experiences to then potentially scale out. So I think these are really important learning lessons and great experience. So thank you, gentlemen, for sharing on this question. Now, just talking a little bit about IoT and OT devices, right? Just switching gears a little bit, we know that a lot of people used to call these devices dumb devices. Why are they dumb devices? Not because they do dumb things, right? But because they have limited computing resources. Many of these devices are sensors, or many of these devices they don't have operating systems. And so these devices don't allow for traditional security solutions to secure them, right? Or they don't enable traditional security paradigms to work the same way. And these challenges make it difficult to implement cybersecurity for OT and ICS historically. And that's what the shift had enabling us to look at securing IoT and ICS with connectivity and efficiency using zero trust, etc. How can we effectively secure these resource-constrained devices, Anton, within the industrial controls environments, even though they don't have any real capability to secure using traditional tools?
You called them dumb devices.
I didn't, but people do.
Yes, if they was dumb, there will be no problem. Okay. The problem is that they are smart, that they're not smart enough to implement security. So, the saying like the letter S in IoT stands for security. There is no letter S. And the thing is, as I mentioned, if you're at the very beginning with a new project for IoT implementation, start asking your providers, your service providers, your hardware, software providers about security controls in place. For that, you can reference to the standard I mentioned, IEC 62443 IoT part. There is a list of requirements. You can just use them to ask, do you have this kind of mechanism controls in place? This is first. If you already have your system implemented, you need to, if you cannot do anything, installing anything there, try to use compensating measures. First of all, as I mentioned, monitoring. Try monitoring everything around these devices. The network, the telemetry, the configuration changes. Try to monitor the vulnerabilities they have. Try to do the patch management, of course, with prioritization. So this is the basics, basic advice to try to protect at least something with IoT, with implemented IoT devices. And of course, start thinking about the updating them with the devices having security in place. And we see on the market they're getting more such kind of devices.
Interesting. I absolutely agree. And you know, you touched on the air-gapped concept. You know, historically, this region was, you know, had a lot of air-gapped and isolated, disconnected environments in the industrial controls space. But not only, I mean, in other spaces as well. Now, as you also mentioned another key part just now, which is the monitoring. Now, Ray, you know, if environments need to be monitored better, it's kind of conflicting with this concept of air-gapped, right? Because when an air-gapped environment for industrial controls is in place, it's less feasible to integrate new IoT environments, remote working capability, because if it's air-gapped, how do you connect to it remotely? How do you add IoT, OT environments that need to be monitored holistically, externally, if it's air-gapped? So yes, we have the on-premise part of it, that's a different story, but what are the alternative approaches, some of the alternative approaches that allow us to ensure security while maintaining the necessary connectivity in a digitally transformed ICS environment?
Right. So I think the audience agrees with us that the age of isolated networks, OT networks, is something of the past or on its way to be something of the past.
Especially with COVID, right?
Especially with COVID and the increased remote connectivity or remote secure access that you require. So if industrial companies are not adherent to the Industrial Revolution 4.0, where they are now confident that they can open up their interconnection and to the interactions to the outside world with confidence that they are giving the least privilege, zero trust access to just the users or the devices that needs absolute access to your environment, then you will open up yourself to a lot of vulnerabilities and attacks. And you know, when people attack critical infrastructure, the result is not, you know, files being just published on the internet. No, you got control systems that are being manipulated by outside rogue users that can result in national disaster. You know, the national grid being attacked, the water, electricity being attacked. It's no joke. So the systems that you employ should be able to understand the OT standards or the OT protocols, and if not, and you mentioned antiquated or old protocols, the solution that you put in place, if there is an odd protocol that is not recognized, have the system able to learn the transactions and adapt and provide some learning mechanism to support that protocol to have a holistic approach to cybersecurity. Because like I said, the net result of an attack is not really pleasant, and you don't want to be in the receiving side. So the more protection, more preventive solution becomes of paramount. On the first line of defense in that is an identity-based, policy-based access management that only allows the right user, the right device, the right application to access the right resource with your policy embedded in it completely. So that's what I advise to do.
Interesting. So Ray, just before we move on from this question, you do believe that with today's technology and today's tools that exist, organizations can securely move away from air-gapped environments to a digitally transformed environment where at the minimum they can connect remotely, securely to manage these environments.
100%.
Because you said it yourself, a water grid, electricity grid, power grid, gas pipeline going down, is literally a threat to national security or to human life.
Yes.
So you do believe that the tools do exist that can provide that secure connectivity to manage these things remotely.
100%, and also they are based on the latest phenomena in access management. Zero trust, identity-based, multi-factor authentication, multi-hop authorization, encryption of the data back and forth, all now exist to help you smooth that transition to the outside world in a more safe and secure way. Without a doubt, absolutely.
Wonderful. We'll come back to that point around zero trust in just a moment. So, Marcus, now we're seeing that you mentioned, several of you have mentioned this, but especially you and Ray, Marcus, there's a convergence happening between IT and OT, whether we like it or not. I mean, we know that OT used to be separate, different teams, IT used to be separate, different teams, and they would not speak to each other. In fact, it was like a isolation, right? And understandably. Right? But today, if the OT environments are going to have these digitally transformed approaches, IoT, holistic monitoring, zero trust remote access, let's call it, there has to be a convergence of IT and OT. Even if it's partial, or even if it's an IT element in the OT environment. Maybe a full connectivity might take a little time, and still a further few steps of evolution to get there. But with this convergence, Marcus, what role does employee training and awareness play in preventing cyber threats that target both domains?
Okay, that's a very, very interesting question. One thing that we still see is that when you were trying to sell to OT guys, it's a different approach than selling to IT guys. IT guys are more used to have more attention than OT guys. So that's the first difference that we realize. But when it comes to creating security, I believe the OT guys are still, they have less time with the cybersecurity issue. IT guys are concerning about cybersecurity for more time. So the first thing that I would like to address here is that they need to have a kind of cross-discipline approach. So I believe that awareness and training is fundamental, not only for IT, but mainly for OT, because it's a new subject for them. So training is really, really crucial. Because if you plan and if you train, then when you get hacked or you have an incident, you can respond faster and better.
So Marcus, who needs to be trained? The IT teams or the OT teams?
I believe that both teams need to be trained, and they need to be trained together. I mean, they need to understand how to train together, because IT guys have different experience than OT, and OT different environments. So they need to combine forces to get trained together so they can improve the whole system, because as they are getting connected, they start to becoming one single environment. Not only have the OT guys on one side and the IT guys on the other side, the infrastructure is getting connected. So I think it's very, very important to put the teams to work together. And a few kind of exercise that I see a lot in IT that must be applied to OT as cyber games, war games. So they need to understand how to defend against a cyber attack, how to respond to an incident, how to react to a hamster attack, to respond to any kind of incident. So this, I believe that it's fundamental to have strong training, cross-discipline training, and simulations of situations that can, that in the moment that it happens, they can respond faster and better.
So before you jump in, Anton, just 1 second. Before you jump in, just Marcus on that, just to close this thought, really interesting. The usual silos of OT and IT meant that there was a separation of duties. In fact, this was a very common term in this environment, right? Separation of duty, to keep it completely separate. But now what you're suggesting is we evolve the training itself to include, number one, both teams together to a certain extent. But it's also a very intelligent thing that you said, because if the IT teams are now aware about the risks associated with the OT environments, that gives them that visibility that they didn't have before. On the other side, the OT teams, if they become aware of how IT can make them more secure and productive by helping them digitally transform, I think this is a key pillar that a lot of people tend to miss around how to accelerate this convergence between IT and OT. The bringing together of the teams can be facilitated by training, right? A lot of people question, how do we bring them together? How do I bring the OT decision makers and the IT decision makers together? I see that your point is quite valid, that training can actually make that happen. The bringing together at the same training to enable both sides. Sorry, you were going to say something,
Yes,
Anton.
thank you. I love this topic, the people aspect in the cybersecurity, and I would like to add more than education. It's important, you know, the diplomacy aspect. The people, the teams should respect each other. They should respect the other team's experience, their needs, their knowledge, their skills. I was at so many conflict meetings with the teams, OT, IT, and industrial automation. The people sometimes are being arrogant. They think they know everything. They try to convince the other team they know about risk. This risk is the most important, not take into account the other team's needs and understanding the situation. This is more about the diplomacy. This is about empathy. You know, this is more not technical but psychological aspect. It's very important to take into account as well.
100%.
Can I say
Yes, Ray,
something?
of course.
So there is a big storm happening nowadays for the collision of IT and OT, and the middle there is IoT, and there is the cloud and the internet over top of it that is creating a little bit of a concern and uneasiness on it. And the reason why is because, like the gentleman says, IT and OT has been separated in the past. But now that we have seen a lot of calls from chief information security officers that all of a sudden have to take into account the OT infrastructure because they are integrating in their environment and they need a lot of hand-holding. And the main reason why we see this is because in an IT environment, you go by 3 different principles. One is confidentiality, then integrity, then availability. That's their prime drives and motivations.
Principles.
When it comes to OT, it's quite the reverse. Availability becomes number 1 priority, integrity, and then confidentiality in that order. So you're mixing motives and aspirations into one, and then you need to deal with them. And yes, when you do training, you bring both of them together so the IT guys are more well informed about the OT concerns and vice versa. So you can have a holistic approach to securing the organization, both IT, OT, and IoT in the future.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So, gentlemen, you know, we're talking a lot about training being sort of a future-thinking way and future-thinking approach. And we're going to come back to Zero Trust in just a moment, but I'm curious, you know, each of you are senior leaders in your respective domains. You've talked a little bit about some of your experiences and best practices, but let's look forward. So we know about the past, air-gapped environments. We know about the present, the convergence. Let's predict the future, shall we? A little bit. I'm curious to know how do you foresee the evolution of cybersecurity threats and the corresponding defenses in the context of industrial control systems, as well as IoT and remote work, and how these two specifically continue to advance? How do you foresee the evolution of this space?
I will be the first one who will say the buzzword AI. So
I was waiting. Somebody did mention it before, but I was waiting to see how many times it would come up.
You can make tick in your game. So AI, and yeah, we see the rise of AI, and we see that not only in business applications and some kind of ChatGPT customer and some media. We see the implementation of AI on the defensive side of cybersecurity. But the interesting thing that there are lots of implementation AI on offensive side. We see the hackers and attackers, they use AI technologies to make more to get more performance in their activities. We see the attacks on AI-based systems, and that is so. This will lead us to the arm race. We will see that attackers are getting more and more effective, and we, as cybersecurity specialists, we need to catch up. So
This is like a standard, though. It's been going on forever, right?
Yes.
We're always playing catch-up.
yes, and again, the rise of AI, the reason of that is the rise of computational resources all over the world. We see this will also lead to the era of quantum cryptography. We will see that it will be much easier for attackers to decrypt the cryptography algorithms that was supposed not to be decrypted. So we also need to take into account this. So, and moreover, I will see that we see that cyber is getting the new battleground for everything, for nation state, for gangs. And we see more implementation of cyber technology, AI technology in real arms, in real weapons, in traditional battlegrounds like space. We see that in sea battles and on ground and so on. So this is the negative prediction from my side, but we need to be effective, we need to be faster, we need to be the low-hanging fruit for attackers.
I would even dare say, Anton, that AI is already here. It's not, I mean, of course, it's going to evolve, it's going to mature, it's going to drastically change over the coming generations, but it's already here. So to a certain extent, I think that if AI is already here and it's going to start impacting and creating cybersecurity risks for OT, ICS, and IT environments in the near future, although we're playing catch-up all the time, taking into account the concept of converging IT and OT becomes that much more paramount importance, right? We're talking today about converging IT and OT and how there's challenges associated with it. But it's almost like if we don't converge quickly, right, we're going to run the higher risks of being impacted by AI because we need to benefit from the collaboration that exists in security on both sides, correct? So, I mean, the quantum part, I mean, that's a whole different ballgame because, you know, you're going to need to have the same encryption algorithms that are going to be used will need to be quantum proof, which of course I'm going to count on the vendors to ensure that they put that in place. But from an AI perspective, I see that this is a challenge. We saw earlier with Karim's presentation this morning in the keynote that, you know, there's already fake GPTs, Worm GPT and XGPT that are providing various different capabilities within large language models. So I think this importance of convergence is even greater. The importance of the convergence is even greater to combat this AI threat, right? You wanted to add something, Ray, on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that you mentioned a glimpse in the future.
Yes.
And I'll take some of what we see coming in the future. You know, in addition to all of the industrial-based and critical infrastructure companies, they are looking at future visions like Factory 4.0, which inherently assumes integration between IT and OT. Industrial Revolution 4.0 also that looks at more of interconnected you know, assets between IT, OT, and the cloud. Just imagine there will be in probably 2030 around 55 billion plus IoT devices that are connected somehow to the cloud and to the internet. Just think for a minute, how would you devise a solution that ensures that nobody takes bad intention of those devices that are connected to the cloud? So there is a massive, like I say, massive storm happening just with IT and OT colliding, but we still haven't seen the big impact of all of those billions of devices coming on to the cloud. How do you make sure that the interaction and the interconnection are secure. So it is something that you will see a lot of companies evolving solutions into that area to address that very important.
Maybe AI can help there too, because
Absolutely.
of the sheer volume of devices. So from your point of view, Ray, it's about the proliferation of devices, the sheer volume and amount that are going to be connected that needs to be taken into consideration, right?
Absolutely.
And traditional tools probably cannot scale to that 50, 60, 100 billion kind of device count that we're talking about.
They will fail, believe me, if no new paradigm is being introduced to absorb these type of volumes. You would agree with me, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Yes,
Marcus?
I agree. Things are becoming more complex, and for me as a defensor, I think it's going to be funny. And this cat in the hat game, I believe, will continue. But I would like to highlight here maybe a mindset, a different a cultural approach that I see that is making me thinking about. And it's about the cooperations among the companies. So usually when you talk about critical infrastructure, you are talking about huge companies, massive infrastructure spread around. And besides technology, what I'm seeing a lot of open innovation happening. So small companies, not only with AI, but different mindset, more agile, are coming together with big companies to think different how to approach cybersecurity. So I believe that this kind of combination will not only take advantage of all the technology innovation like AI, because in one hand, I believe, okay, the attackers, they have AI, but defenders also have. And so we will find our way. But the combination among big companies and small companies will create a different approach to how to create to find different approach to cybersecurity. And I believe this will be something that we'll see even more and more, because the agility from small companies can help build different approach to cybersecurity. So I believe the combination of technology with people cooperating will create
Interesting. So it's about collaboration of organizations. Do you believe this is more related to public-private partnerships or more related to forums of interrelated organizations across different sectors coming together to defend, as a front, as a united front? Is it more public-private or more collaboration between, let's say, vendor, customer, partner type organizations?
Yes, I believe that the big, I think that this is not about public and private, but about the size. I think big companies, they are slow, so it's difficult to implement. So I believe that the combination can be a public or a private big company combined with a small and agile company with a different mindset.
Okay. Within the same sector or across different domains, like vendors that make technology with customers, with consultants that all come together, or a large customer and a small customer coming together?
I believe that a small and a big and a small customer, but when we talk about innovation, diversification is really the key to find different solutions from different aspects. So it's good when you have people from the same industry work together, but sometimes it's very interesting that you can find different solutions coming from different perspectives. So I believe this innovation approach where you have more collaboration, diversification in terms of thinking can bring new ideas and help us to
I really like the idea because, a year ago, one of the trending topics in cybersecurity was around threat intelligence sharing. People were talking a lot about, how to share threat intelligence and collaborate on this information. But here, what you're talking about in terms of evolution is going beyond threat intelligence sharing and really talking about sharing best practices, challenges, tools, TTPs, right? Tools, techniques, and procedures to collectively help the nation and the entire set of organizations that maintain industrial controls environments to more securely protect against these environments.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point, Avinash. Threat intel sharing is of paramount importance to organization because you want to learn about your adversary and inspect their TTPs to see whether they are trying to infiltrate your organization or not. So that's even before an attack happens.
Exactly.
It's very important to have those links so you have the intelligence about that threat coming in, and if some of the variables matches an attack that you are already aware of it, and you can prevent it from happening. So that's from preempt. Once you install the solution, also you need to have an ability to gather the intelligence of that solution is providing you, so you can share it with the rest of the organization, or you can share it with the outside community if you have an ability to do that. So threat intel, whether pre or post, is of paramount importance in this environment. Excellent. I don't know, Anton, you can help me with that, because your solution gathers a lot of alerts that could be shared with different customers for the objective of preventing an attack maybe in the future.
Well, our solution is one of the possible sources of indicator of compromises here. But it's important to, as I mentioned, to get as much as possible different aspects. Yeah.
So do you think, before we close on this question, Anton, is it practical? See, let's be clear. Let's be practical with this question, because ICS environments are highly sensitive, highly confidential, and that's why they were air-gapped in the first place, right? And now we're talking about digitally transforming. Is it too future thinking? Is it too evolved to think that organizations can share ICS-related threat intelligence data amongst themselves to create a united front across different types of organizations? Because you guys have various different backgrounds and different tools and different technologies, but is this something that can be considered for future defense?
Well, it's a totally specific topic for a
Another
different session.
session.
Yeah, but I would like to say the problem of sharing is a big problem. For example, if you have a look at what's going on, for example, in the US, they have lots of ISAC organization, information sharing and analysis. And they are all
FSISAC
ineffective. No one shares. So people are not motivated to share. They should be motivated either by some incentives or with regulations. And at some other areas in some other countries, there is regulations on sharing, and they have to share.
Sure.
And they share, they anonymize and share. And we see lots of collaborative initiatives about vendors. They share their telemetry from their clients who voluntarily shared anonymized information. It's happening. It's getting a little bit better from time to time.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I like this approach, that if there's regulation associated with sharing, it might be able to create a united front. But again, we're not talking about sharing sensitive data, right? We're talking about sharing information that can help critical infrastructure organizations defend better against these threats. So I really think it's going beyond just information sharing, because disclosing a breach, that's one thing. That's almost not relevant here. It's really about how these critical infrastructure organizations can come together.
Yes.
Great.
Let me
yes, sir,
add one
please,
point
Marcus.
about my experience. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I would answer you a different way than I will answer right now. But I have been working with big organizations, and what I have seen had impressed me so much, because I have seen really big competitors working together. And it has been a very interesting experience how they can cooperate and they can see it. And they have meetings every week to see it and share challenges. They do not share specifics about the business, but they share. And when it comes to innovation right now, it's very, a small company can just rise up and do a very big change in the market.
Sure.
So
more
they
agile,
need
more
to
dynamic.
cooperate, because otherwise they will not survive. And I have seen this happen, and I'm very impressed with that. So to answer your question, I have seen things that I wouldn't believe maybe 3 years ago.
Lovely.
In terms of cooperation.
Amazing. So AI proofing, we talked about collaboration, I think all very important for the evolution, and of course quantum, etc. Gentlemen, we have a few minutes remaining. I'm going to rapid fire this last question, 1 minute each, just to close on this topic. Zero trust security is a very important topic to me, to CyberKnight. We've been talking about it for the last several years, and it's still a very trending topic. Now, all of you in some way are related to this concept, right? Zero trust as a framework has a lot of key fundamental assumptions, continuous visibility, never trust, always verify, use least privilege, enhance user experience, all the good stuff. I think many of the much of the audience is already aware of the zero trust tenets. But you know, within Zero Trust, you have data, devices, networks, identity, visibility and analytics, automation orchestration, and now governance, right? Individually, 1 minute each, how do you see Zero Trust being fundamental to securing industrial controls environments?
Maybe I can start by saying implement or prevent implicit trust to users. Provide controlled trust to users in order to streamline your operation, but only give complicit and privileged and controlled access to users who they must have access to the asset. So shy away from implicit trust where you give implicit trust to everybody and give focused trust to users that absolutely need to have access to the asset, so you can minimize the attack surface to your infrastructure. That's what I do.
Thank you, Ray. Anton or Marcus?
I would just like to say that, you know, for me, Zero Trust is just fancy name for all good things like least privilege, segmentation, and so on. And, you know, for that sense, just use the best practices on micro-segmentation, on controlling all the possible access attempts where it's possible in OT. I understand that it's not impossible to install agents everywhere, but where it's possible, try to control, try to verify, don't trust. So this is just basic idea.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, Ray talked about the least privilege, and you've talked about microsegmentation, which is both fundamental tenets, frankly, of Zero Trust. So good that you guys brought these two out. Marcus?
And, well, I'm with him, so Zero Trust is the fancy word right now. So I would say do the basics very well, right? So least privilege, network segmentation, segregations of networks. So do the basics very well, clear proceedings, and this will help a lot to have this, to avoid this implicit trust that he mentioned. So I think this is a good concept to do the audit stuff, but be concerned about doing it right.
Doing the basics and doing it right.
Yes.
Good way to close, gentlemen.
Trust but verify.
Yes.
No, never trust, always verify.
Yeah, okay. Never trust, always verify. Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want, please, if you don't mind, I'd like you to put your hands together to applause for these great, esteemed panelists with me today. Thank you, Mr. Ray Kafity, Marcus, and Anton. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. I hope you all have gained some insight on this key topic of securing industrial controlled environments in the era of IoT and remote work. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show.